What happens when a calm morning show interview suddenly unravels into a complete breakdown on live TV? When a guest's polished public image collapses, revealing deep frustration and unresolved emotion. Today we're unpacking one of the most intense moments in morning show history, when best-selling author Brandon Lake completely lost his cool during what was meant to be a routine book chat on the Today Show. This wasn't a typical awkward celebrity interview. It was an unforgettable explosion that kept audiences glued to their screens and social media talking for weeks. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and share in the comments what you think really caused Brandon's meltdown, because there's definitely more to this than it appears. The Today Show studio was alive with its usual energy as Hoda Kotb prepared for what seemed like a standard author interview. Brandon Lake, the writer of 3 consecutive New York Times bestsellers, was there to promote his latest novel, a dark, psychological thriller stirring up attention for its bold and emotional themes. But no one expected that the real drama would play out right there in Studio 1A. Hoda opened with her usual friendly tone. "We're here with best-selling author Brandon Lake, whose new novel has everyone talking." "Good morning, Brandon. Thank you for joining us." Brandon shifted in his seat, already looking uneasy. "Thanks for having me, Hoda. Though I have to admit, I'm curious about how this interview will go after what I've been hearing." Hoda blinked, slightly caught off guard. "I'm not sure what you mean. We're just here to discuss your book." Brandon's tone was sharp. "Are we? Because I've done over a dozen interviews this week, and every one of them has turned into a deep dive into my personal life instead of focusing on my work." Hoda smiled politely, keeping her composure. "When you write stories that explore such heavy psychological topics, people naturally wonder what inspires you. Your latest book deals with trauma, family conflict, and dark emotions." "Exactly," Brandon said quickly. "And that's the issue. Everyone wants to analyze me instead of my writing. My book stands on its own." "Of course," Hoda replied, still calm. "But the similarities between your protagonist's childhood and what you've shared about your own upbringing are quite striking." Brandon's jaw tightened. "What similarities? I'm getting tired of reporters trying to turn my fiction into a diary." Hoda glanced at her notes, trying to guide things back on track. "Your main character struggles with abandonment and authority issues. In a 2019 interview, you mentioned growing up without your father and having teachers who misunderstood your creativity." "That was 5 years ago," Brandon snapped. "I was in therapy, probably oversharing, trying to be open. That doesn't mean every character I write is based on me." The air in the studio grew tense. "I think readers relate to authors who are honest about their experiences," Hoda said. "Honest?" Brandon repeated, his voice rising. "You mean exposed? Every time I want to talk about craft or story, journalists want to dig into my childhood like it's entertainment. Brandon, that's not my goal," Hoda said softly. "Let's talk about your writing process. How do you create such realistic characters?" "Through imagination and years of study," he said curtly. "Not through reliving personal trauma for an audience." "But surely your life influences your writing," Hoda pressed. "Most authors draw on emotion." Brandon shook his head. "I thought this show might actually discuss storytelling, but apparently everything has to become about pain." The studio fell silent. Hoda took a breath. "I'm sorry if that's how it feels." "Your books connect with people on a deep level." "Don't talk down to me," Brandon said sharply. "You've got producer notes telling you exactly what to say to get a reaction." "This isn't journalism, it's performance." Hoda's tone cooled. "I didn't expect this reaction. Most writers enjoy exploring how their life connects to their work." "Most writers," Brandon said bitterly, "are willing to perform their trauma for attention. I'm not one of them. I won't pretend my father leaving when I was 8 defines who I am as a writer." "Nobody's saying that," Hoda replied firmly. "But you've discussed it before." "Once," Brandon said, his hands gesturing wildly. "And now it's a label I can't shake. Every interview turns into another therapy session." Off-camera, producers looked panicked, unsure whether to cut to commercial. "Brandon, I think that's unfair," Hoda said. "We're talking about your book, which includes themes of family and trauma." "Because they're universal," Brandon fired back. Do you think Stephen King writes horror because he's a maniac? Or that Gillian Flynn writes about dark relationships because she's lived them? Writers explore pain because it tells powerful stories, not because we're all damaged. That's a fair point, Hoda admitted. But it's natural for readers to wonder how much of the author is in the story. Wondering is fine, Brandon said, leaning forward. But what you're doing isn't curiosity, it's voyeurism. You want me to bleed on camera? The studio crew exchanged uneasy looks. That's not my intention, Hoda insisted. The Today Show has always been about connecting with our guests. Connecting? Brandon laughed harshly. You mean prying. You're trying to pull something from me that I never agreed to give. Brandon, you're a public figure, Hoda said, her patience thinning. You've shared these things before. Oh, right, Brandon mocked. Once it's public, it belongs to everyone forever. You people tear it apart and call it journalism. That comes with being a successful author, Hoda said flatly. People are curious. Brandon stared at her, stunned. So my pain is part of the deal now? That's insane! Hoda's voice hardened. You're being combative. We invited you to promote your book. This behavior is out of line. Out of line? Brandon's laugh was bitter. You mean refusing to be exploited? Turning a discussion about art into a therapy show, that's what's unprofessional. I've spoken with world leaders and never had this issue, Hoda said sharply. Maybe because they knew better than to open up, Brandon shot back. They didn't make my mistake, trusting you with something real. You're being unreasonable, Hoda snapped. Maybe this is all for publicity. The words hung in the air. Brandon froze, then whispered, A publicity stunt? I'm just saying, Hoda continued. Authors sometimes stir controversy to boost sales. Brandon stood so fast his chair crashed backward. You think I'd humiliate myself for attention? You think I'd expose my trauma for clicks? Brandon, please. No. You want to know why I'm angry? Because people like you have turned every artist into a spectacle. That's not fair, Hoda said. But Brandon wasn't listening. Every story I write gets twisted into my biography. I can't write about love without people assuming I'm heartbroken. I can't write about death without people assuming I'm unstable. Do you even believe imagination exists anymore? Writers always draw from their lives, Hoda tried to argue, but Brandon cut her off. And there it is again. You can't stop reducing everything to psychology. The set was chaos now. Camera operators hesitated. Brandon, calm down, Hoda said weakly. We can pause. Now you want to stop? Brandon laughed darkly. After getting the perfect viral moment? This is exactly what you wanted. I never wanted this, Hoda said, shaken. Didn't you? Brandon's voice cracked. You kept digging even when I asked you to stop. Because this meltdown, that's what this show thrives on. He picked up his book, staring at it. You want to know what this book is really about? It's about how privacy doesn't exist anymore, about how every emotion becomes content, about how people like you think they deserve every part of someone's soul. He set the book down gently, his anger fading into exhaustion. I wrote it as a warning, he said quietly. And here we are, living it. The studio was silent except for the faint hum of cameras. Finally, Hoda managed to speak. We're going to cut to commercial. Good, Brandon said, removing his mic and letting it fall. Because I'm done. Was Brandon right to explode, or did he take things too far? Was it the questions that set him off, or something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable moments from live television history.